Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Aaron Wysocki here with Chris Houck, and we're in the boiler room, and we're checking in with another live video here. We're gonna be interviewing local Pittsburgh members of the Young Turks, and Chris has the honor of not only being a TYT employee, but also a longtime member. So we're gonna start with Chris today. So I've got a set of questions here that we're gonna run through and hear what Chris has to say. So how old are you, and what city and state do you live in?
You kind of already answered the second half of that question,
That's
right?
true.
I am recently 33, and I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right, easy enough. When did you become a member of the Young Turks?
I became a member in 2011. It was the winter of 2011, and I had been listening to the free podcast for about I'd say over a year, like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, because I found it through the Best of the Left podcast, which if you guys listen to podcasts, you should check out Best of the Left. TYT was featured on there, and it was just completely different from everything else that I had heard up to that point. I was a big MSNBC guy. I loved Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow, and I was listening to their podcast every day. But there was something about TYT that was different, something that was real about it, and I went from Best of the Left to listen to the free podcast, and after a while, because Jake makes everybody feel so bad for not becoming members, I eventually became a member because I wanted to listen to the whole show, and it's led me here. It's led me to a career, so not a bad deal.
Yeah. So before you became an employee, and where Chris publishes. So you watch the show that way. How did you consume the show? Just podcasts? You just listen to it?
Yeah, because when I finally met you, you're like, well, how often do you watch on YouTube? And I'm like, YouTube? And it's so funny, that's what my job is based on now. Like, we're so focused primarily on YouTube and video, but for me, the show initially was just audio. It was just the podcast. The audio podcast. I didn't even really watch the video podcast. I didn't really have any interest to, because I just like just listening. And when I listen to things, I still listen to podcasts really frequently. I can get things done. I could do my laundry. I could do the dishes. I could go shopping, things like that. Can't do that with a video podcast. So that was the primary way that I consumed the show for a long time, basically until you hired me. And now I watch the show every night because I have to watch the show every night. That's my job.
So before you worked for TYT, what did you do for a living?
I was a substitute teacher. Recently became a substitute teacher. I had just graduated college. I got my bachelor's degree in social sciences with a teaching certificate attached to it so that I could teach in Pennsylvania. And then I just stayed on and got my master's because I had time left on my GI Bill. So I'm like, I might as well just knock out my master's because it's so hard to get a teaching job here in Pennsylvania. So that's what I was doing before TYT was I was substitute teaching, which I liked. I liked it a lot. But the thing is, it pays terribly. It pays so poorly. And I could barely, survive off of what they were paying. Even in Pennsylvania, which pays teachers really well, they don't pay substitutes very well. So, what it was when my first year of substitute teaching was coming up, it was spring, and I realized, oh my God, in June, I'm not going to have a job. And I didn't know what I was going to do because there's no school, and then am I gonna have to go back to serving in a restaurant or something like that? So I asked you, like, dude, please, anything, just give me a job, and you were able to bring me on part time. So
nice.
Yeah, thanks again for that.
Wow,
yeah.
Time flies.
It really has, yeah.
All right, so describe TYT in 5 words or less.
Oh man. You always get me with the 5 words or less.
It's a fun little game.
He
we play here in the
randomly,
boiler room.
yeah, he got it from Pop Trigger, and he randomly, like, after something happens, he'll be like, okay, tell me about it, 5 words or less. I'm like, oh, God. TYT, 5 words or less. I'm gonna... media speaking truth to power.
Nice. There you go. Perfect. All right. Who's your favorite co-host and why?
Alternate host or co-host?
Either or.
It's gonna be Anna.
And why?
Because she's my friend.
And Chris is Anna's favorite TYT employee also.
She said that once. I don't think that's true. She said that one time.
Wasn't in the fog of the conventions, right?
Yeah. So she was delirious. We were working like 70 hours that week. Yeah.
All right. Next question. What motivated you to take the extra step to become a paying TYT member?
It was that I wanted the whole show because, like I said, I was listening as a podcast, and you only get certain segments of the show, like the first half of the first hour and maybe the second half of the second hour, and I wanted the whole show. I felt like I was missing out on a lot of stuff, so it was worth it to me. It was worth it to pay that $10 a month, to get that extra content. And then I fell in love with the post games. I still love the post. Excuse me. I still love the post games. I love Old School. Old School might be my favorite show. Period. I love Old School. So yeah, being a member is definitely worth it.
Cool. Good. All right. Next question. Are you surprised at TYT? This is kind of a tough question for you to answer now that you're an employee, but are you surprised by the growth of TYT into a multi-platform network with all, we're on Hulu, we're on all these different platforms, and we have all these different shows now. Does any of that surprise you?
It does, but it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because the reason that it resonated with me is the reason that it resonates with other people. Actually, I should be, and I am more surprised that we haven't taken off more. Because when you see a lot of the stuff that's still out there that, they still put on TV and stuff like that, it isn't real. And I feel like people want genuine stuff. They don't want the fake scripted nonsense anymore. They want real stuff, and that's what TYT brings you. So I'm actually more surprised, now that I think about it, I'm actually more surprised that we haven't taken off more.
All right. I'm going to skip a couple of these questions. If you were to co-host the show today, what story would you want them to cover?
Well, I just read this article yesterday that one of my college professors shared. It was from Forbes, and it's about how the Republicans are sneaking through a tax, and the Republicans are supposed to be so anti-tax, right? But it's going to be this enormous, essentially a sales tax increase, and it's going to hit poor and middle-class people so hard. And they say that it's going to offset because we're going to cut taxes for everybody, income taxes, and it's going to be better for everybody. But really, we all know what that means. It just means that the top 1% are going to get huge windfalls, and they're going to get so much more money, and we're going to end up paying a lot more for just everyday things like socks and gas, and if you buy a car, it's going to be a lot more. It's really bad news. So I don't know if we're going to cover that today. So that's something that that I think we should, that if I was on the show today, I want to talk about.
Yeah. All right, last question. Has the show ever convinced you to change your position on a particular topic or issue?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing probably is that I was, and I still am, a big Barack Obama fan, and I probably wouldn't have questioned him and the Democrats nearly as much if I didn't follow TYT, and I do now. I question them a lot, and I question their legacy a lot. But before, I was just completely sold, like whatever Barack Obama does, it's the right thing. and Jen convinced me otherwise. So yeah, that's a big one.
It's important to question authority, no matter what side you're on.
Yeah.
All right, so last thing, thank you for doing this.
Yep.
And
Happy.
tell the folks
Happy
at
to.
home where they can follow you on Twitter in case they want to hear your thoughts
Oh,
about
cool.
behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah,
about working with the Young Turks.
I don't tweet often, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to start tweeting a lot more. So please follow me at Houckola, which is HOUCKOLA. That's my Twitter handle.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank
All right,
you.
Chris.
Thanks, guys.